And today we hear President Putin saying that they have the evidence of a $45 billion contract being offered by the World Economic Forum to kill President Trump-elect. Well, President-elect Trump, President Trump. 45 billion. Okay. So now I have an insight to offer President Trump. Congress does not set according to positive law. Since 1861, Congress has been appointed by executive order, which means that it's a territorial military government and it has no substantive law of its own. Now, this is convenient if your intention is to act as a mercenary force and make money off of mercenary activities, because such a government can never sue for or declare peace, actual peace. Only those who have actual law can create peace, which means the people of this country. Well, you'll notice that we have declared peace. But Mr. Trump doesn't know the background. Or if he knows the background, if he knows the true law, if he knows what happened in this country, he's sure making a really good imitation of somebody who doesn't have a clue. So now the WEF has put out an absolutely staggeringly huge bounty seeking to have him killed, just like they had Kennedy killed. And Mr. Trump, besides hiding out in Cheyenne Mountain or some similar action, always looking over your shoulder, always having to live in fear of these criminals, this is what we can do. You can recognize the fact that the people of this country are the actual owners of this country, that we are alive and well, and we're here still as ever, that our government is now in session and has been in session since 2019. You can recognize our peace declaration, which was issued several years ago. And that's why we are flying the peace flag. Now, Mr. Trump, we can do things that your government can't dream of doing because we have the standing to do it. We have the substantive rights that are necessary. And what we can do, and what you cannot do, is that we can nationalize as many or all of these corporations as we choose to. And we don't have to ask anyone about it, because we're not only the presumed donors, we're the heirs. This is a process called lawful conversion. And because our country was used as a pirate base to expedite these acts of piracy and criminality among corporations that were being operated as privateers and in other criminal capacities, we are the ones that own them. We are their priority creditors. We are the ones that have the actual power of the law behind us, and we are the ones who can lawfully convert all of these WEF members. Now, what happens when you lawfully convert a corporation and quote unquote nationalize it? It comes under the jurisdiction of the land. It comes under national and public law. So it comes under a different form of law. And suddenly, these corporations, which have been running amok and running rampant all these years and operating in such a lawless and criminal fashion and fomenting war, and more war for profit, and spinning off all of these groups that are labeled fascist and communist so that they can fight each other some more, all that goes away. And I can tell you right now that at the end of the day, the Americans wind up owning everything. And we have it in our power to dispose of everything back to where it belongs. We have that right and we have that responsibility. And you, Mr. Trump, can help. You, Mr. Trump, can get rid of the WEF and take it over. We can do that and make it possible for all of the people on this planet to have peace, abundance, and freedom, and do it lawfully and legally and peacefully. We have the ability to take over all of the corporations that are members of the World Economic Forum and nationalize those corporations right back under the control of the national governments. And that's what we suggest that you do with that $45 billion bounty placed on your head. I think it would be a very fitting reply to the WEF and all of the corporations and all the future leaders like Pierre Trudeau's son, Justin, and all the other oligarchs and elitist monsters that have been prowling around like ravenous beasts, seeking only to murder and steal. Put them back under the law of the land and under the control of the national government. Our national government, for starters, but then also the national governments of all the other countries that have been the victims of this vicious fraud, all of this vicious privateering, all this horrible meddling that has taken place at the hands of the British government, the Westminster government, the government of Ghent, and the government, the secular government attached to the Roman Catholic Church. We can put them down. We have the lawful means. We are their priority creditors. So this is a position of power over them that our hired help can't begin to amass or execute. All that our subcontractors can do is to fight against these powers that be, which they have been colluding with for the better part of a century. The people of this country absolutely do need to get organized. But our position is not dependent on numbers. Our position is based upon identity. And the way to think about this is to think of it in terms of inheritance. Say that there is a large estate and there are 24 potential beneficiaries, heirs to this estate. Well, first of all, there is an obligation on the part of the court and any public government, or even a government acting as a public government, to make sure that a good faith effort is made to reach all of the heirs. That's number one, and that hasn't ever happened. Number two, if having made a good faith effort to reach all of the heirs of this particular estate, only, say, 17 out of 24 show up, well, then the court has to acknowledge that there's a possibility that there may be 7 more heirs or 7 more known heirs, but they are not here, and so a disposition is being made of the property and estate in favor of those heirs that did show up. And it doesn't matter if only one heir showed up and claimed the estate, and there was one valid heir, then the whole estate goes to them. And it doesn't mean that they get the estate as a whole. It means that they get the estate with the proviso that 23 other people could show up and claim their part. And additionally, there may even be other people that aren't present, who aren't known to the court, but nonetheless could come forward and via DNA or other means bring a valid claim. Now, our particular inheritance, which represents the states and all of the natural resources of this country, have been put through any number of legal loopholes. And the same thing, by the way, has been done in Britain, in Spain, in France, in the Netherlands, in Denmark, in Sweden, in Norway, in Lithuania, in Poland, in Germany, in Austria, in Italy, and throughout the entire Commonwealth system, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, even Japan. Okay? Mr. Trump, I'm telling you something of the greatest importance, not only to your own life, but to the life of the planet. Stop messing around. If the military knew what was going on, then the military is complicit. If the military didn't know what was going on, it was incompetent. Those are our choices. I would rather believe that they are and were incompetent and that they're all just finding out about all this stuff right now. I would much rather believe that than believe that they self-interestedly hoisted all of this off onto their country and their countrymen. In any event, recent statements, including a complete, utter misunderstanding of what the 14th Amendment is, who it applied to, what is meant by birthright citizenship, All of this leads us to think that you really don't know what's going on. And we have the answers. We have the substance. We have the position both as donors, grandfathered in, and as inheritors and beneficiaries of all of these various trusts. The other thing that we want to tell you, Mr. Trump, we don't know if you're playing for chump change or if you're just really trying to pull the wool over the eyes of the people of this planet. And for what reason, we don't know. But 600 trillion is literally a drop in the bucket. It may be what is owed to our military, to our veterans, in terms of back pay, in terms of stock options that they owned but were never told about, in terms of educational guarantees, in terms of home funds, home ownership funds that were never dispersed, in terms of insurance that they were owed and never benefited from. Yes, it may be that our military veterans throughout those countries affected are owed 600 trillion because, let's face it, they haven't been treated fairly, they haven't been told the truth, and they haven't been given their benefits with any kind of sobriety on the part of the bankers for 160 years. But 600 trillion isn't even the beginning point of a discussion concerning the substantive value that the average people of the countries involved have suffered and lost and had to repay and rebuild and pay bogus interest on their own money and on their own credit. It's not even the beginning of a spit in the wind when you compare the losses that the actual living people have served and the abuses of quote unquote private direct taxation, which was never allowed under our Constitution or any other actual national government. All of this stuff has to be addressed, Mr. Trump. The whole issue of the quote unquote national debt, which is not our national debt, but is instead the debt of the British territorial United States. We have a great many issues to address that are like that, and we have a lot of research that can pinpoint for you exactly where the bear went through the buckwheat. This past week, I published an article that gave you everything you really need to know to get started on the issue of the unratified 14th Amendment. Now, you may ask yourself, how can an unratified constitutional amendment be enforced? The same way that all the rest of this has been done. By executive order of a commander-in-chief operating as the president of a British territorial corporation pretending to be us. Everything that has been done since March of 1861 has been done on a premise of resolutions. Oh, we, the members of the Congress, resolve to behave ourselves and to pay our debts. And each and every one of us who has ever made a New Year's resolution and failed it knows exactly how much that's worth. Mr. Trump, save yourself. Save everyone on this planet. Hear what we're saying. Notice, realize who we are. Realize that we do know what we're talking about. Know that your military advisors, as they are scrambling, trying to catch up, are not the absolute be-all and end-all of the people you should trust. Not on these issues. If the military and the civilian government, the actual civilian government of this country, come together, there is not a force of nature on this planet that could deny who we are and our right to do what we're doing. And I don't believe that our neighbors in China or Russia or Iran or any of the other countries would object, because they've been victimized by the same industrial and corporate, commercial corporate, and municipal corporate interests that have defrauded and abused us for 160 years. We all have our reasons for destroying the World Economic Forum, for disbanding the present iteration of the United Nations, which is not so much a gathering or organization of nations, but a gathering of corporations representing nations, which is quite a different thing. Mr. Trump, I'm a great-grandmother from Big Lake, Alaska. If I know these things, don't you think that other world governments know that what I'm saying is true? Do you think for a moment that the Vatican doesn't know that what I'm saying is true? Do you think that the Russian government is unaware that what I'm saying is true. Although the facts we've uncovered span more than a normal human lifetime, governments have a considerably longer lifespan and memory, especially when it comes to the arcane subjects of who owes who what, whose land is where, and who owes what in terms of treaty and contractual obligations. Among the 5,000 private trusts that have been subsumed under false legalistic fraud, there are trusts that have values in the dodecazillions. Numbers like 240 plus 240 zeros following, representing cash assets and credit derived from those assets and interest that was charged on those assets. Our American private trusts account for a very large percentage of world assets in general, whether it's gold, silver, land, or anything else. And why is that? It's because we paid. We paid in actual goods and services and resources the bills of the entire world for decades at a time. Mr. Trump, it is incumbent upon you to end the illegal occupation of our country by our own military. It is incumbent upon you to stop the hemorrhaging and the embezzlement of our resources and assets. Do you realize, Mr. Trump, that $800 million total has been spent on our veterans this past year? That is the magic number that it has cost to maintain our troops in the field all over the world in over 950 military bases, plus everything for the Veterans Administration, all of the various benefits paid out to veterans, everything, $800 million. Are you aware, Mr. Trump, that during the past 4 years, Ukraine has been given $114.2 billion with a B? So let's compare 800 million per year, considerably less than 4 billion spent on our military over the past 4 years, and 114 billion, 114 times more, probably 130 times more, spent on Mr. Zelensky. Hello. Talk about the conscience of a nation. Talk about all your military supporters who are taking it in the shorts. The truth of the matter is that those men are not only owed all their back pay and restitution, their share of the 600 trillion, they're also owed their share of their national endowment. They're also owed their land back. Mr. Trump, we find it very difficult for us to believe that you are unaware of these facts, that they are unaware of these facts. And for the past 4 years, we've been standing here waving the olive branch, writing you nice letters, sending you emails, giving you evidence to consider, doing everything that we possibly could within the constraints that we are under at the moment in terms of what we can do, such as the fact that we can't, in good conscience, participate in your corporate elections because we are not shareholders. Okay? But given our constraints of those sorts, we've done everything we could to reach out to you, to give you valuable information. And what we get back is always back channel chatter. Other governments in the world recognize who we are. Why the hell can't you? We're the people, the actual nation of the nation states, the sovereign nation states, not the territorial nation states, not the municipal nation states, but the nation states of this country. We are the ones that can declare peace and make it stick, and we've already done so. See the flag. By what possible excuse do our federal subcontractors operating under our delegated powers and under a constitution have for continuing to destroy and discredit our Title IV flag? Under what pretense does your corporation continue to operate when it has been brought to the attention of the public internationally that our Title IV flag is supposed to be flown in wartime and our delegated powers are supposed to be operated during wartime, but not as a commercial mercenary conflict emblem and banner? We are telling you boldly, plainly, in public, on the airwaves, the quote-unquote American Civil War was never a war. It was an undeclared and disguised, illegal, mercenary conflict. And every single thing that has happened ever since in terms of these conflicts have been conflicts and not wars, because the actual government that has the ability to declare war was not in session. This is plain English, Mr. Trump. And if the military is serious about wanting to clean up the mess, which has been left on its doorstep since 1863, then the military needs to take action, and not just endlessly promise to take action, to clean this mess up. Joe Biden has discredited, dishonored, and disgraced his position as the President of the United States Corporation, one of the federal subcontractors. He did it on public television when he recounted how he abused his power as the Vice President of the United States Incorporated to have a Ukrainian prosecutor who was investigating his son Hunter's attachments to a Ukrainian oil company, Burisma, fired, and using aid to Ukraine to leverage this. He bragged about it. He's a criminal. He's a disgrace. He always was. He was a disgrace on that score before he was quote unquote elected. And we all know that that man was never elected by the people of this country. He may have been elected by a foreign electoral college predominated by European continental interests, but he was not elected by us. And now he's reprised this by pardoning his son Hunter and again burying the evidence of crime and dishonor. Mr. Trump, we are very tired of seeing our country dragged through the mud by our subcontractors. We're sick and tired of British meddling and British BS. Now, our will is to have a peaceable, civilized, businesslike rapprochement and to work together toward restitution for the victims. And part of that rapprochement and restitution should logically include the nationalization of such obnoxious corporations as the Federal Reserve, Pfizer, the IMF, the members of the WEF, all of those that have taken part in betraying the entire world population for their own gluttonous, unjust enrichment and power-mongering. And right here, in the hands of a relative handful of old farts, a few hundred people, are the keys. The actual lawful means to seat a land and soil jurisdiction Congress, the true perpetual union, and the only perpetual union that has ever existed, to stand in our position as the priority creditors, to nationalize all of these criminal corporations, to put an end to globalism, transnationalism, and transhumanism. That is our right, and that is our power. And you're still dinking around, chasing around with the military boys, and believing a whole bunch of BS apparently believing such a bunch of BS about such things as the 14th Amendment, which was never ratified and was never owed any kind of enforcement against anyone, ever. So I trust that your friends will give you a copy of this, and I hope that you take the time to listen, because this is a message straight and direct to you from the people of this country, the actual people who have returned from over the sea and are sick and tired of being misidentified and having their identity stolen. Thank you very much.